All right, you guys, I'm going to be talking about Lab 12 here today. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to introduce some conditional stuff, kind of an if-then kind of a situation, so you can make some decisions in your program. So I'm going to write up here some, let me get my pen first of all here. All right, so I'm just going to write up some syntax for you here. So if there's an example of what you could do. So you start out with an if statement. You have a Boolean expression in there, which simply means there's a comparison. There can be a less than in there. There can be less than or equal to. Okay. So your Boolean expressions, less than, greater than, less than or equal to looks like this. Greater than or equal to looks like this. Equal to looks like this when you're comparing, a double equal sign. This simply is testing. So like if I put if age equals double equals 15, I'm testing to see if age and 15 are the same. This is always going to return a true or a false. So you're going to put some sort of Boolean expression in there. It's going to determine if it's true. The semantics here, you guys, is it's going to evaluate the Boolean expression. So it's going to determine whether it's true or false. Those are your only two options. If it's true, then we're going to implement all of those statements. Okay, we're going to execute all of those statements. If it's false, it ignores those brackets and jumps right down to the next line. Okay. One more piece of syntax and semantics here that I can add to this. Okay, I can add an else statement down here. Okay, so let's call this statement A. Call this statement B, okay, in brackets. And so basically what this does is it says, hey, we're going to evaluate this Boolean expression to begin with. It's either true or false. If it's false, we skip everything in statement A and we execute the statement B. We go to the else. If that's true, then we execute the statements here, statement A, and we ignore then statement B. Okay, so you can have a comparison that way as well. Okay, the other thing I want you to see, and I'm going to add a page here, is some specific syntax here. So if I say if, okay, so there's a Boolean expression for you. Okay, so here's an example. So I just put you were too young. Let's say you're too young to drink alcohol or something like that. So if age is less than 18, so let's say there's a variable called age, it gets stuck into there, there's some value stored in there. So if less than 18 is true, then we're going to go ahead and execute this statement. And an alert statement, this is new for you guys, is just going to be another little window is going to pop up on your screen and going to say you are too young. It's going to say whatever inside those quotes, that string literal. Now, of course, if you're 22, well then you're not less than 18, and it's going to skip all of that altogether, and it's not going to show the alert. So that's an example of how that works. Okay, so why are we going to need these comparisons? Okay, let's go ahead and look at the actual lab. The lab is going to relate to what we did with the weather last week, but I'm going to take you through some steps and I'm going to show you some specific code here too. So the lab is an extension of Lab 11. It gives you a chance to practice using selective execution in JavaScript, in other words, if-thens. Locate weather.html and weatherfunctions.js. okay? You use those. If there was an error in your code from last week, make sure you fix it and get it working so that we can add to it, okay? You might have noticed that with dew point and wind chill, there were sometimes it didn't make a lot of sense, the results. I don't know how many of you tested, but it wasn't perfect, okay? It worked for what we needed it for, but it wasn't perfect. So there's some things we have to fix. The first step is for you to fix the calculate dew point function that you put in your weather function .js file. So in your JS file, you had two functions, calculate dew point and calculate wind chill. So that function that's in that library, you have to fix it. So it says the dew point calculated by that formula is valid only when the humidity is above 50%. So you're gonna have to have a conditional in there. If humidity is greater than 50%, then do the stuff that you did before. Otherwise, if it's not, there's two things that have to be done. First, it should issue an alert like we saw on the previous screen that indicates that the humidity is too low to calculate the dew point. So a window should pop up saying that. And then it should return the string literal invalid. So instead of returning dew point, some variable, you're going to return in double quotes invalid, so that a value that's not a number gets sent back. And I'll show you why that's important in a little bit. Okay, so you have to change those two things in that function. Okay, then you have to fix the update dew point function in weather.html. Now, last week we said, hey, you don't have to mess with that. It's all good. Don't fix anything below it. Now we're telling you to fix it. After the call to calculate the dew point, add an if statement that prevents the output div from being updated when dew point is not a number. So if you had to return invalid, in which case it's not a number, you need to have an if statement in there. If not a number is true, then you need to ignore it, right? You need to not update the output div and work from there. And I'll show you the code for that, okay? So you can ask me here, I'll help you out. All right, so you have to put that if statement in there, okay? The next step is we have to go into the calculate wind chill function, which is in your library that you created. The wind chill calculated by that formula is only valid on temperatures less than 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so you have to have an if statement in there. You know, if temperature is less than 50, then go ahead and calculate just like you did before. Otherwise, you need to return that string literal invalid and put an alert up there saying that the temperature is too high to calculate a wind chill. Okay. Okay. Another problem is that the wind speed is 3 miles per hour or less. The wind chill is actual air temperature. So wind chill equals temperature at that case. So you got to put an if statement in there for that too. And then of course you have to change the update wind chill function so that if an invalid or a non-numeric value is returned, it needs to ignore it, not update the output div. Okay, so how does that look? Go into Genie here a little bit. And we're going to start with this one. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is how to update, how to change that part that we weren't supposed to change last week. So you'll notice right here, in my function update dew point, right here, the dew point is equal to calculate dew point. So it's going to that library, that function in the library that we created. And last week it would have just calculated it, right? This is the key piece of code that you need to add to yours. If is NaN, so if is not a number, so basically we're checking to see if dew point is not a number. So if not a number is 0, meaning is false. 0 is false, 1 is true. So if not a number is false, meaning it is a number, then go ahead and do what we did last week. Otherwise, we're just going to ignore it. And remember how an if statement works. If this is true, then it's just going to go right down past that, and there's no place for me to update the output div. We're going to skip all of that code. So you need to do this for the update dew point, and then you also need to do it for updating the wind chill, right? If an invalid comes back, you need to skip all of this stuff and move on. So make sure that you put that in there, okay? The second thing that you guys need to do okay? This is what your code would have looked like last week. You need to go in here and change those to reflect the new information that we learned. So for instance, if humidity is greater than 50%, go ahead and calculate this. Otherwise, give us an alert that says that the dew point is too low to calculate, or the humidity is too low to calculate the dew point, and we're gonna return invalid inside of quotes, okay? So make sure that you add those pieces. If you have questions, please ask me. We can have some office hours during lecture or during the lab day for that. But please ask if you guys are stuck on this. So make a plan to try to figure this out, and if you have questions, email me, show up during office or during the lab time, and we'll figure it out. Okay? Good luck, you guys.